Hey, everybody. Real Kyper at noon. Thanks for joining us. Doug McLean on assignment. Can you hear the background? Who's laughing at Doug McLean on assignment? Joining me in just a little while will be Alan May from NBC Sports Washington. Of course, Alan will give us the latest on what's happening with the Caps and who's going to be their next head coach. Which experienced guy is going to end up behind the bench of the likes of Ovechkin, Carlson, all these stars, because apparently young and inexperienced doesn't get the job done. But let's go off the ice. And this is the beauty of linemovement.com, Real Kyper at noon live streaming, man. We get to talk about the latest. And what's the latest? An NHL trade. How about that? And where the beauty is now, teams that are no longer involved in the Stanley Cup playoffs get to make a trade. And that's why the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins closed out a deal today that would send Kapanen, there it is, Kapanen from the Toronto Maple Leafs to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So let's bring in Alan May and talk about this right off the bat. And Alan, if it shows anything else, it shows how desperate the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins are in setting next season up, whenever that may be. But they could not sit and wait. They didn't want to wait for a scenario where you're at a draft or there's a lull in the off season. They wanted to send a message, both teams, real quick to their fan base that how they ended this hub bubble isn't good enough. And that's why we saw a trade.
Well, absolutely. I think the biggest reason you see this trade from Pittsburgh's point of view is they look very small and very slow in the playoffs. And it's hard to believe you'd say that about a Pittsburgh Penguins team. But I think a guy like Kapanen, I'm a big fan of the way he plays the game. And he's a third line guy to me. And you can get your first and second line going by throwing him up there. He has to get back to how he was a couple of years ago. This year, he seemed off kilter a little bit. He wasn't quite himself. He and Zach Hyman are, usually straightforward, straight line guys. A to B, no detours. And Kapanen is something desperately needed, I think, on the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's young and he's fast. He's got good size. He's decent size. He's about the size of you and I, which is about the appropriate size to build your team at right now in the National Hockey League. The big lumbering guys, they're not necessary anymore, and we're seeing that in the bubble. And then Toronto, it's all about clearing out cap space. They're getting ready to do something big, obviously. I would expect them to make a few more trades. And I would think that Alex Pietrangelo would be on their list. They need a right-handed dominant defenseman that can come in and help them, get out of the first round, win a playoff round, and maybe do something for many rounds after that. And it starts with the leadership. They need some more of that there. The young guns aren't cutting it. So this works well for both teams if the Leafs can get who they want in free agency or via another trade to make sure that they get an actual right-handed stud defenseman.
The Leafs end up with a first-round pick, which is Pittsburgh's original pick. And we do believe that'll be a midterm pick. They say the draft is pretty good. So more importantly, as you touched on, $3.2 million off the books off of Kapanen. But, Alan, we know that's not enough. If you're going to go get Pietrangelo and you're going to spend in the vicinity of $8, $9, $10 million on an AAV, they're going to have to do a lot more than just move out $3.2 million here. So is this the start of what Kyle Dubas wants to do here moving forward?
I would think it is the start. They do have to clean out more money. They have to be better on defense. When you look at their defensemen, are they as good as people say because they play in Toronto? They're in the media center of the National Hockey League. Every leak comes out of the Toronto area, all the information that we get around that league. But I think players in Toronto can be overblown. The guys that are in defense, the third and fourth line guys, are they as good when they leave? And they're usually not. So they need to add depth in Toronto. They need to make sure the defense core is way, way better. You have to have guys that understand what the importance of blocking shots, just quick zone exits, all the little things. So you'd think they have to do something up front. They're top heavy, if you ask me. They lack bite in their top two lines. I can't really find a fault in John Tavares' game. But when you look at some of the other guys, you've got to get to the center of the ice. You've got to battle hard. You cannot play a perimeter game. So it would make me think that a guy like Nylander, even though apparently he was promised he won't be traded, would be the guy you'd want to move out at this point. He's got some high danger skills.
Yeah.
He can carry the puck zone to zone. He can get it in on your power play. But to me, he would be the guy that is most expendable of your top tier talent when you talk those top four guys.
Well, there is a core guys for sure that you can lump in. There's Janssen, Kapanen, of course, is gone. Nylander, everybody expected Nylander to be moved out at some point in this offseason. It appears, though, that Kyle Dubas is going to remain loyal to Nylander. It appears that, when he said, I can and I will sign all these guys, it was not for somebody to get moved out a year later. It appears to me that, with Kapanen gone, he's really going to hang his hat on Nylander for at least another year. And you just wonder if that's a great idea because, when I look at Kapanen and I lump him in with that second tier of forwards with the Toronto Maple Leafs outside of their 10 million plus players, he may be the guy with the most bite. That he played with an edge. He looked like he got pissed off out there. Leafs are already short on those type of guys. It's not like in this trade they replaced them. And at some point you can talk about Pietrangelo, you can talk about that right-handed number one defenseman. But man, when we watch the playoffs today and we watch a guy like Reeves go around there and absolutely terrorize the Vancouver Canucks, or a Tkachuk against Winnipeg, or even you look at Ben now in Dallas, and there is an edge in the year 2020 that you still have. The Leafs, say what you will, I think they lost a little bit with Kapanen now gone.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big believer in the way he plays the game. His chip and chase game, getting to the pucks, he stops on it. When he's feeling good, I don't know how healthy he was this year, but when he's feeling good, he gets to the puck first every time. He has blazing speed. He's an unorthodox skater, but he's so powerful, and he gets there. He can have a lot more goals than he does have, but I believe that he understands his role, and he can help any team be better, get to the gritty areas. And one of the things we're seeing right now, the Washington Capitals lost in the playoffs because they couldn't get to the middle of the ice. The Tampa Bay Lightning, they didn't get to the middle of the ice the other day. Philadelphia, you've got to get to the middle of the ice. And Kapanen is the kind of guy that can get to the net. He can get to the other team's goalie. He can play well below the goal line, an excellent forechecker, gets back on D. You can really play him in a lot of roles. So when you look at bite, you do have to have that. But right now, if you're going back and forth between Nylander, right now what I'm seeing in the playoffs is the young skill guys that are used to being in shape year round, and not tempering their body and tapering and getting ready and making sure they're ready first week of October to get in shape. All the young guys are kind of flying right now. So, it would make a guy like Nylander much more valuable to some of those teams that look slow and old in the preliminary round and then the first round here.
Nobody would know Pittsburgh better than you, covering the Metro Division all these years. When you think of Kapanen, do you think of him playing with Crosby or Malkin?
Well, Malkin's a guy that he kind of detours a lot. It's a 200-foot rink, and he might skate 300 feet to get the puck down the ice. I would see him more inclined with Crosby, who's more of a straight line, blazing jets type of guy. And if Kapanen just drove to the net, it'd be a lot like Warren Reichel and all those other guys that got to play with Gretzky. Get to the net, stick on the ice, and you got a lot of backdoor tap-ins. So, if they're going to go in a top six role for him, I think he'd be way more suited for Sidney Crosby. Like I said, he's a puck hunter. He gets after it. He gets to the D-men. Stick is on the ice. Mike Sullivan will have him at warp speed all times because Mike is a very active coach. He's very direct. I think he may be the most direct coach in the National Hockey League. And I think it's important for players to know what they have to do, and there are consequences to not doing it. Not just standing there with your hands in your pocket like we see way too many times. Adjust, correct, and get guys going. And I think Kapanen will be a very nice fit with Mike Sullivan.
I just hope Kapanen's smart enough to go in there and have an open mind. And, you've watched Crosby as much as anybody over his career. And what's interesting to me with Sidney Crosby is that we've seen certain superstars over the years kind of hitch their wagon to maybe one guy, and you've seen it with Ovechkin and Backstrom, and yet Crosby's never really had that winger at any point over long stretches of his career in Pittsburgh. We've seen guys like Connor Sheary come in and out. We've seen Gensel have some great success, but he's not the easiest guy to play with. And yet, if you're smart enough to just really listen to him and tailor your game around his game, you can have great success. It was thought when Kessel got first traded to Pittsburgh that it was just a natural fit, that they were going to end up playing together. And they saw, times when they were together, but it was not an instant natural fit. I'm just wondering if Kapanen now is open-minded enough to sit there and say, I want to play with this guy first and foremost, and I'll do whatever it takes to be successful.
I'm sure he would be excited to be the guy riding shotgun with Sidney. And, he's completely different from Phil Kessel. And this is a rock hard muscle guy that skates as hard as he can every single game. And I don't think Crosby's going to want him to change his game too much as far as, slowing down, because he's a jet. He doesn't weave in and out of, the neutral zone when he's got the puck. He doesn't regroup back towards his D and take the big long loops a lot like Phil can do. But you look at drive to the net, fight hard for your pucks. And I think maybe Sidney Crosby, that's one of the values that people don't credit him with, is how great he is with the puck on the wall, how fast he gets it to the net. And to me, Kapanen is a scrum guy. So there's a lot of garbage that's going to be around the net when you play with Crosby, because you look at what Gensel can do in tight, a beautiful goal scorer. I think that would be an excellent line if you're able to put them together, at least on paper. But the biggest thing to me about Kapanen, no matter what, I believe that he makes your team better by being an all-out, every-game kind of guy. And maybe he did need a change. And Sidney Crosby's been very welcoming to anyone that goes into Pittsburgh. Look what he did with Kessel. They win a couple of cups together. And obviously, Jim Rutherford doesn't want to waste, the remainder of Sidney Crosby's career by, first-round exits and, not even getting to the these preliminary rounds and making sure they're in the playoffs and going a few rounds. And certainly they want to win the cup, just like everyone. But Pittsburgh isn't just letting it go by the wayside. That's kind of one of the things I like about Jim Rutherford. A lot of people think it might be crazy with all the trades.
Keeps it fresh.
He goes after it. He does go after it. And every year he's been in Pittsburgh, he's made something happen. And obviously it worked for him the first couple of years. It's not that easy to sustain. And how many teams have won back-to-back cups? Just the Pittsburgh Penguins in the last 20-some years. So he's got his foot on the pedal. He's an older guy. He wants to keep winning. And while you got assets like Crosby and Malkin and Letang, you got to go after it, because you don't want to give them a team that's looking for the first overall draft pick. You want to give them a team that's looking for the 31st if you have one, or the 32nd if you have that pick. So it's definitely they want to win the Stanley Cup, and I think Rutherford is sending a message that he's going to start making changes. And I would expect 4 or 5 more guys to be out of Pittsburgh before the next season starts, before the next training camp. 4 or 5 of their regular players should be gone.
Nick Kyprios, Alan May here on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Thanks for joining us. That's what's great about live streaming here. It seemed like moments ago the Toronto Maple Leafs, Pittsburgh Penguins consummated a trade, and we get instant analysis with the likes of Alan May. So we want to hear your comments. What do you think of the trade? You like Kapanen in Pittsburgh? You think he should play with Crosby or Malkin? Let us know on your comments. Subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you tell us how much you like it by giving us the thumbs up. And let us know how you feel about this trade. Okay, Alan, let's take it on the ice a little bit. And I thought you were kind of a perfect guy to maybe lead this conversation in terms of 2020. And yet we look at the skill and we marvel at the speed of the game. And yet we'll still go back to the game of hockey and intimidation. And I watched Ryan Reeves, and I worked at Hockey Night in Canada for the last 5 years, and now I'm watching as a fan like everybody else. And it's so interesting how much airtime Ryan Reeves gets. They love, first of all, Hockey Night in Canada absolutely love Ryan Reeves. That's apparent. But everything from warm-up to watching him on the bench seems to be at the forefront. And right now, he absolutely owns the Chiefs. Remember that line?
Slap shot, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But what answer does Vancouver come up with in game 2? Because I wouldn't have liked it if I'm a Vancouver Canuck fan, that this guy is laughing in our face. And there's parts of Russell's game that you like. He's a spunky guy and he brings energy, but he is way over his head. And it's apparent in game 1 to go up against a guy like this.
Wasting their time worrying about Ryan Reaves. And when you look on the depth chart, when it comes to goal scoring, he's probably 11th or 12th of all their forwards. And let him throw his late hits and make him pay. You've got to get him into the penalty box. Don't push and shove with him. Don't get in verbal altercations. Just treat him like he's the invisible man. Pretend you don't know he's there. And he does make that hard, but they're letting him be too big of a factor right now. And I think you've got to use it against him and use it against the Golden Knights. You have to ignore it. And
I don't know,
you know
Alan.
I'm going to just say from all the years that I was an antagonist and whatever you want to call me, but there are certain times you just go after the other guy. So Roussel is wasting his time and he's distracting his team by jawing and the pre-face-off scrum and tussles after the whistle type of scrums with Reaves.
I agree. I agree.
You have to ignore it. You have to ignore it because what if the last minute of a game is Ryan Reaves going to be on the ice? Not a shot against him, but no, he's not. Neither was I. Neither were you. And unless it was a 5-goal blowout, then it's a little bit different, message being sent. But I just don't think so. If I'm Roussel, I take up Marcia. So you try to go after all of those their skill players, their speed players. And the rest of them,
key.
Quinn Hughes and all those guys, go after their other players, altercate with those guys. And people don't like to hear it. And, what people want out of politically correct hockey, but you're trying to win a championship. Vancouver is a young, inexperienced team. They didn't look like they deserved to be on the ice the other night, but I think they spent too much time thinking about Ryan Reaves. You could hear him throughout the entire broadcast making chicken noises or whatever he was doing. And he seemed like he was a Hockey Night and an NBCSN infomercial for Ryan Reaves the other night, how much they spoke about him. When a fourth line guy is the biggest factor in a game, you're definitely not paying attention yourself as a team. So Travis Green, he's got to make sure his guys ignore Reaves and try to make him a minus player and make it so he cannot be a factor and make it so he's a retaliator and not just make sure that he is not a factor in the game. Don't let the game be about him. Way too many people, even us, are talking about him right now, and I think that bodes well for Vancouver that they didn't handle that properly.
I agree with you in terms of you're not going to fight him, and I don't think you need to go over. You don't have to overdo the fact that you're in his face, but I don't like the philosophy that I'm just going to hope that he sleeps, because this guy,
sleeping. Just don't let him be active.
This guy's 11 games away from winning a Stanley Cup. I mean, he's starting to smell it now. I don't think that he's gonna sleep. And at the same time, I can't just allow him to have a credit card to go run Quinn Hughes, who, I don't know, does he weigh 150 pounds, this guy? Like he's gonna turn him into one of those advertising boards. If I keep allowing him to have this credit card.
Well, you can't trade for Gino Oj. You can't bring Gino Oj back right now.
No, I know that. I know that.
So you have to ignore him. You have to. His strength is not skating and it's not speed. He's a good hockey player, but those aren't his strengths. So you move the puck past him. You retrieve the pucks quicker, and you just don't let him be a. Don't let him push and shove. Don't let him intimidate. Just laugh at him and skate away and make them pay in other areas. And target their number one defenseman. If that's Nate Schmidt or whoever they decide it is, or White Cloud, the rookie, do anything you can to take those guys out and get them off their game. And I just think you have to be the aggressor and the instigator of all activity and just ignore Reaves and let him put him in a position where he feels like he has to do something. And hopefully it's a minor, a double minor, a major of some type that you can take that incredible power play that they have in Vancouver and make it work against them.
Well, give Reaves credit because he's just not your 1980s meathead. He can play. He's 10 minutes. He can skate. He can, in 10 minutes, be a big-time factor. And we saw it in game 1. And they've got a very deep lineup, and they spread the minutes around, and their stars are their stars. Tuck is a guy that could easily be a second line centerman everywhere else, but he's fitting in nicely in the third slot. And you just wonder now, did Vancouver come in as a team that jumped the shark against the Stanley Cup champions, and now everything's a bonus? Or did game one give them the thought that, oh gosh, we're way over our heads here? Would we know this in the first 5 minutes of tonight's game?
Well, they certainly have to weather the storm. And the biggest thing, they're going to have to change their tactics, their line deployments, maybe even shortening their fourth line's minutes. You can fall in love with the Jay Beagle and play him too much. Like, just make sure that the fourth line's not on the ice too much for Vancouver. Rely on those young skill players. Manage the puck better. And I don't think you want to get into, even though Vancouver has a lot of skill, you do not want to get into a track meet with the Golden Knights. You've got to slow the game down. I would say more poke checking and blue line walls of 4 and 5 guys where they dump the puck, get the better zone exits. You have to modify your game, slow it down, play more patient, and hopefully one of your young guns, when they get chance, can get you a goal or two here and there. But I think you have to play a way more patient game. I thought they pushed and they made a lot of mistakes with the puck the other night. Puck management for the Canucks was horrible. One too many moves, one too many passes. Just get the rubber to the net and see if you can get something. That I just think you have to own the middle of the ice. Don't worry about owning the boards.
I just want to touch a little bit on Vegas's game one win of being more than a statement on a few fronts, but the number one was it came off of Alan Walsh's tweet on Fleury. I just wanted to get your thoughts on all of that, and then I want to follow it up with, you had a great career that spanned over 16 years. I want to get your thoughts on maybe what you thought was maybe one of the biggest distractions you had to deal with in your career. But let's first get your thoughts on how Vegas responded and what you actually thought of the whole weekend.
If we're talking about Alan Walsh,
we're always talking about Alan Walsh.
So you know what I do love about the guy is, years ago I used to think it was crazy what he would do, but then I looked at it and I talked to a few of my buddies that are agents, a couple of our old teammates, and they like the fact that he goes to bat for his guys. He's all in for his players. And, taking it down was a sign that it was a mistake and it was a distraction for Fleury. But Fleury, if anyone's been around him, is one of the best teammates you could have. When what was going on with him in Pittsburgh at the end, I thought they unjustly took him out of the net his last season there going to the playoffs, because they knew that deal was already done, that he was going to the Golden Knights. He didn't cause a distraction for anyone. He might not have been happy with the coaching staff, but he went in there every day. He was a happy guy. He was an excellent teammate and shared the crease very well with Matt Murray. Never went at him. Was always a positive force in the dressing room. Got himself another Stanley Cup, not as a starter, but he was there. And I just think that he was able to handle it with the guys. He likes to laugh. They love the player in the room, no matter where he's at. He's been incredible for that franchise, and you still may need him. So it's a distraction that the team doesn't want. The general manager, the coaching staff, none of the people in the Golden Knights ownership or management wants that distraction right now, because you want to talk about winning. So the biggest mistake that Walsh made was he affected, or could have affected, the possibilities of winning and creating some team dissension. But I think with the Fleury being around as long as he has, and I've never heard a person say a bad word about him. I know guys that have played with him. I've met the guy, been around him, and he's phenomenal. He's an incredible human being. So I'm sure that he took care of it. He doused that fire, and now they're just waiting to get through a few games so they don't have to worry about it anymore. And I don't think Walsh should be doing that for Fleury anymore. Not that he did it for him, but I just don't think that.
I don't think we'll ever hear. We won't hear on the subject again until after the season.
And it'll be a good one. It'll be great when it does happen. Yep. But I do like the fact that he goes to bat for his players and just doesn't take it on chin. But it also, at some point, you wonder if there's retribution for him. They're saying, like, one of his guys that Vegas could have a younger guy, or another team just said, we're not going to do anything for the guy, because there's some give and take that the agents have with certain general managers, and he probably is not on the good list or the Christmas card list to Kelly McCrimmon right now. I would say definitely erase that address, and it's not happening.
Yeah, and just as players, we know that there's constant distractions. Like people throw that word out publicly after, something gets leaked or somebody finds a way to get the story out, like how Marc-Andre Fleury felt betrayed by DeBoer. But we know that there's a lot of distractions constantly in our dressing room over our careers that just don't see the light of day. Is there any that stand out in your mind?
Well, some of the things we had, I think in Washington one year, we had players that had overperformed according to their salaries. And I'm not sure if it was real or true, but it got leaked into the dressing room and it became a thing that these players weren't going to play in the playoffs. And there's no proof that it ever happened. But all of a sudden you have players speaking about, and you were there, I was there, that players are talking about things that happened that we don't even know if it was real or not. And it becomes a distraction. So you're no longer thinking about winning and losing. I think anytime that you have a team with a contract holdout, very seldom have we ever seen a player or a team have success and win a Stanley Cup when you have multiple holdouts on a team. So as far as my career, not really a whole lot. I had one year where I was waiting on my arbitration ruling for like 5 months, and it came with about 2 weeks left in the season. And, that could be a distraction, but more so because my loyal agent, Ron Seltzer, was pissed off 24/7 that we should have had, an announcement within days. And it took to the end of the season to come out. And, the team, I had won the arbitration supposedly, but, it was a crooked system back then. And the team ended up giving me the contract I wanted retroactively. So it worked out well, but I didn't let that bother me. I just think that you want to keep everything you can in the dressing room, whether it's, wives not getting along, players, you've got to make sure that, and that's everything in life too. That's not just in the the hockey department, but I think you have to have everyone. If you have conflict in the room, that the leaders in the room have to take care of it, sooner than later. Same with the coaches. If the coaches aren't acting right, someone's got to confront them too and get it out of the room, because you don't want to be talking about things that don't matter as far as what you're doing on the ice. It's all got to be, you got to, the dressing room, the entire culture environment has to be about winning, and you've got to get rid of the toxicity one way or the other.
Physical altercations in the wives' room. How about that? Those stories don't get out, Alan, but we know that they're there. But at the end of the day, you are a professional. You are paid an exorbitant amount of money to perform on the ice. That stuff, whether it is a tweet or what's going on in the wives in the family room, has to stay there. You cannot drag that on the ice. And I was very happy to see Vegas perform the way they did, coming off Alan Walsh's tweet. That said a lot, I thought, for a lot of those guys to sit there and say, okay, there's the white noise out here. Here's our job. And if I go back, and Doug MacLean made this point in 94, where MacKinnon was negotiating with another team, and we heard the rumblings and we knew something was up, but didn't care, man. We're this close to winning a Stanley Cup. Keep your eye on the prize. I thought Vegas did a good job of that.
And I attribute that to Marc-Andre Fleury and DeBoer, making sure that they spoke about it. And then Marc-Andre Fleury, I guarantee that he went to Robin Lehner and said, I'm so sorry, man. I didn't want to affect you. You're a great goalie. You're a great guy.
It's not personal. Put it that way.
And you know what? It had nothing to do with Marc-Andre Fleury. I guarantee he took care of it with every one of the teammates, stood up. He's a stand-up guy and made sure everyone hit, this is Allen got ahead of himself. And we certainly don't want these types of things, because there's no way that Fleury doesn't want to be a part of a Stanley Cup champ. It's been an amazing ride so far for the Golden Knights. What's happened that first year, no one would have ever bet that would happen. A Stanley Cup being played in the desert against the Washington Capitals of all teams. So you look at all of it, and he's a great teammate, and Vegas is a really good hockey team. And talk about a city with distractions. Being a Golden Knight, you still got to perform on the ice all the time. So I look now that they're in the bubble, they're in a great environment. You should be closer than ever right now. And the most important thing, once again, is to make your team, as tight, the tightest fist you possibly can, so you can batter other teams down and not let anything get in there. And, watch less news, stay off of Twitter, do all those things, and just hang out with your teammates and, play your ping pong games and drink your beer and get ready for your hockey games.
All right, Vancouver and the Vegas Golden Knights going at it 9:45 Eastern tonight on NBCSN and Hockey Night in Canada and Sportsnet. We go to the East, Boston and Tampa Bay, also slated 7 p.m. Eastern. And I find it such an emotional roller coaster for Tampa Bay. They're coming off a very emotional series for a guy like John Cooper, where he even counted the days that it took to slay the dragon of the Columbus Blue Jackets, 422 days. And then the very next game, he used the words, "I'm extremely disappointed." And I'm like, this one's going up and down for Tampa. So which team do we see? The one that closed out Columbus, or the one that that lost to the Bruins?
Well, when I look at the Lightning, they lack bite with some of their players. If every player had an engine, a motor like Braden Point, Alex Killorn, Good, those players that just seem to go every single shift, you'd be all right. To me, the catch-all there is, how does Kucherov play? You know, the other night, first shift, 4 or 5 mishandled puck touches. You know, not getting the pucks first. You know, like spinning away and just poking at a puck, playing a reach hockey game, rather than using his assets, which are his legs and his shot. And he didn't get enough of that of him. He seems like he gets frustrated too easy, and then he slows down. He's off his game. So to me, I think they go as he goes. If he's not ready to play, if he's not committed to battle through, I saw it with the Capitals a couple of years ago. Ovechkin laid the heat on him a few times, and that was it. There was penalties. There was lackluster play without the puck. And I saw the other night, very lackluster. If you went back and watched that game, you'd see a lot of mishandles, a lot of bad passes, a lot of I don't care type of plays. And it's bizarre that you would say that for a guy that 2 years ago had 127 points during the regular season. The team had 127 points. So he has to be better, and the Bruins have to get after him to make sure that he stays frustrated.
Alan, no one will ever question his talent level, because you can argue that he should be talented enough to have the argument that he's the best player on the ice, the most dangerous player on the ice. And yet he does not have the same effect as a Bergeron or a Marchand or Pasternak, where he makes others around you better constantly. And that, to me, is the biggest difference between Boston and Tampa Bay now. No one will ever argue how good these guys, and I'm a huge Point fan, and I think he's fantastic, but it just seems he's even limited to how good he can make you by playing with him, because a lot of times it's a pretty good individual effort from Braden Point.
Well, you have to keep up with him. The bottom line is, you've got to, when he starts to move, you've got to get into the offensive zone and get to the puck. When it comes off of his stick, you've got to be ready. You've got to get to the net. You've got to get below the goal line. And I think Braden Point, when Kucherov really affects their game, when he's not going after it the way he needs to. And I think Kucherov needs that tenacity and bite to make that line incredible at all times, and a threat like Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak. And you look at those, Marchand as an incredible engine, and he's always going. He competes. He's way better than we ever thought he'd be when he altered his game from playing in that World Cup of hockey. You look at Bergeron. He understands how important it is to be a great two-way player, how to bear down on your faceoffs. And I think Bergeron can teach Point a lot of things in these playoffs. And if Point can find a way to outplay him, which is very tough to do, and make Bergeron work and be a minus player, that'll be great for his career. But the bottom line is, Kucherov has to get his level up. If he affects that team more than any player by being a negative when he's not competing. Phil Esposito even said it, I think it was yesterday, that said it's frustrating because he sees this player with all of this talent that he wishes he had. We all wish we had, but you got to put more drive into it. And that's what we see out of players, that sometimes they get a change of scenery, and all of a sudden, they're not a draft pick anymore, and the new coach puts the gears to them, and their teammates, put the gears to them, that you got to be better at all times. I look at Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. He takes nothing from nobody, and he gets in Crosby's face. They go back at it, and it's not like it's a divisive relationship. He goes after everyone there, and they perform. And I think Cooper needs to demand more of Kucherov at all times, because kid gloves don't work with players that are kind of moody or you can get off their game. Because if you and I, certainly a Brad Marchand, if they know that you can get Kucherov off his game and he's going to be less than incredible, you do everything you can to get in his kitchen as quick as you can and get on him, whether it's a late hit, more into the hit, scrums after the whistle, talking. I don't know if they're allowed to talk on the ice so much anymore, or just make chicken noises. But, the big thing is you've got to get in Kucherov's head. And they've got a lot of really nice hockey. Actually, I shouldn't say nice. I like the gritty two-way game out of the majority of their team. But the minute munchers, Kucherov, he's got to do more with his time on the ice. He's got to be determined that he is going to be the factor. And more important, the centers drive the team. He's got to make sure he put the nail in the coffin for the Lightning as far as getting on the board, getting to the net, and creating chances where you're getting the other team out of position time after time, put in the penalty box, and then eventually converting on some goal-scoring opportunities.
The challenge will be that much tougher. Ryan McDonough's hurting, and all of a sudden they lose a lot of depth there on the blue line. Safe to say almost this is a must-win for Tampa Bay because we don't envision Boston going up 2-0 and then blowing the series.
You just never know. It's such a weird time right now. But I look at Boston. Their strength is their youth. The guys that they have can fly, and they're Chara. He's not the same as he was. You can use his age against him right now. You can tire him out. He looked gassed and winded at times the other night. And the younger players carried them. You look at all of the different guys. It seemed like they had a roster of 30 players the other night. Yeah. They just kept coming at you in waves. Connor Clifton, players like that. Grizzlick, guys were flying. DeBrusk, they're youthful in their game and they're coachable and they got great leadership. When you look at the leadership group of the Bruins, when you look around the entire National Hockey League, you look at the leadership of Bergeron, David Krejci, even Brad Marchand, because he's an every night player, an every game player, and then Zdeno Chara to put you in your place to get you going.
I've said this before. Krejci's if you want to really know the Boston Bruins and their success over the last little while, it really falls on Krejci. When that guy is going, and when he's a real threat out there, it really causes all types of problems for the coaches across the bench from the Boston Bruins because he can act like a number one guy. And when he alleviates that type of pressure off of Bergeron, the Boston Bruins go. If his game goes south, it's really hard still for Bergeron in that line to carry the load.
Well, when you look at Krejci, he's almost an identical player to Bergeron. So you look maybe the two most complete when it comes to not necessarily offensive, but the details of the game in the National Hockey League. Name me two centers that are that good on both sides of the puck. And with Krejci, you just wish there was a few more shots, some selfishness around the cage. And he's got a phenomenal shot. And I mistake those two players. And I know they skate somewhat different, but I mistake them on the ice for each other so many times. Right-handed centermen both fight hard in the dot. They get to the net. They run their lines. They always seem to make the right play. And if they're healthy, they can wear you down. They can wear you down and frustrate you. And, it seems like frustration is something that wears players out more than anything. You get into a guy's head that he can't make a play, and all of a sudden, there's just physical well-being goes too. It's like they don't have the same amount of energy. So when you look at Bergeron and Krejci, that two-line tandem of playing an all-round complete game with a heavy emphasis on doing everything perfectly correct on defense, it's tough to get after and beat teams like that. So those two guys are on their A games right now, if you ask me. They're somewhat older, but it doesn't matter. They're true professionals. And when you look at those guys in Chara, and the professionalism and the leadership group there is phenomenal. And it's a trickle-down effect. And all those players, those young players and the guys that have been around there, the culture that those players have cultivated in being ready every game, ready to go, it makes Cassidy's job a lot easier. And whoever all those other coaches on the bench are when you have a leadership, group like they do have.
I want to take it out last night where we watched the Avs come out shot out of a cannon. And, I want to get your thoughts just on first of all, before we get into the series, just Nathan MacKinnon. And Doug and I earlier talked about the second best player. I think last week we had a conversation. No question, Nathan MacKinnon is the second best player in the world because we We know that Connor McDavid is Connor McDavid. But are we now seeing, Alan, in our era where we had Wayne Gretzky and then we saw Mario come up and then start the conversation for some that really, Mario never had the longevity or the sheer point that Gretzky had, obviously, in his career. But there's an argument to be said that you prefer your best player in the world to maybe have the reach of a Mario Lemieux. And now I'm in a situation where, while we all marvel at Connor McDavid's speed and quickness, maybe there's some out there that like more power to their game. Therefore, they would think that the more complete centerman with so many different tools in the toolbox might even belong to Nathan MacKinnon. Are we seeing that now between Connor McDavid and MacKinnon, much like we saw with Wayne versus, say, Mario?
Well, absolutely. They're completely different styles of players. And when you look at it, the way, I think there's more physicality in the game of MacKinnon. But if you ask me, I think the better scoring touch still goes to Connor McDavid. But he needs to be more selfish. I think MacKinnon, I believe he takes too many of his own chances away. He overhandles the puck at times and makes one extra move and doesn't get the puck to the cage. And I saw many times last night where he should have just shot the puck. And I thought hung on to it a little bit too long and had the stutter steps going. But when you look at who would you want and who would you expect to get you a goal in the last minute of a game, I would lean still more on Connor McDavid. Granted, I did grow up in Edmonton and I still do root for the Oilers, but I look at that and McDavid just wows me. They both wow me. I always say that McKinnon's like a robo hockey player. He doesn't look real when he starts to power up the crossovers and gets down the ice. The quick stick that he has and it matches his foot speed, but his scoring touch isn't at the level of Connor McDavid and other players. And I still look at Sidney Crosby. He's still not out of the conversation for being the best all-around player in the game, in my opinion. His team faltered, but when you see what he does on the wall, the boards, but those two players.
Crosby does the little things that help win Stanley Cups.
Exactly. That's why I still have him as the best all-around player.
And Crosby doesn't have the wow factor. There's nothing in the wow factor that you could put his game up. But we all would say on a one-game basis to win a gold medal or a Stanley Cup, I don't know who wouldn't pick Sidney Crosby. So, but when it comes to the wow factor, those two guys have it, and then there's everybody else in the league right now.
Certainly there is. There's nothing like it. They're generational talents. And I just look at McDavid's. He's been on ever since, as long as he's been in the league. MacKinnon took a little while. He started out strong, took a dip. The team was awful. I didn't like the coaching there. But with his line, they're huge. They're dominant right now. And Colorado's a one-line team, maybe a two-line team right now at best. But every time you see MacKinnon, he just makes your jaw drop with everything he does. He never quits. And once again, I just think that he's still an uptight scorer. He still hasn't let loose. I think a guy like that can get a dozen good shots, high-quality shots a game. He's that good.
Yeah.
But once again, what I believe what I saw the last game is it used to happen to Ovechkin too many times in Washington. Everyone looks down the bench and they expect Ovi to score every goal. You need everyone else to chip in. You need more from all your other players. And a coach can also, I think Bednar, when I looked last night, he needs to make changes. He has to make changes to help MacKinnon be even more of a threat. Is it playing him on two different lines? Is it shuffling his wingers out, constantly changing up the other lines? Because last night it was Nathan MacKinnon and not many other players that you noticed in the positive. They looked exhausted and they didn't look like they should have been on the ice with the Stars.
They looked like a boxer who came out hard in the first two rounds and really had nothing left the rest of the fight because they couldn't put them away. And Hudobin did not allow them to hit the knockout punch in the first period. They threw the kitchen sink at this guy, and 2-0 isn't safe in today's playoffs. We know 3-0, if you want to go back to Toronto. So now all of a sudden, how do you react the next 40 minutes? And I just didn't see it out of Colorado. And as good as Nathan MacKinnon is, you come out and you fire 7 shots on goal in that first period, and you can only get one after 40 minutes. Doesn't give you a clear indication, I think, of the 40 shots overall. It didn't feel like it was 40 shots over 60 minutes. It was like almost 40 shots in the first 20.
Well, you look at the Dallas Stars, they do not get enough credit for what they have. And not enough people know, but I think the best defenseman in the National Hockey League is Miro Heiskanen. The skating ability, he is, to me, the best and most pure skater in the league. And what he can do on both sides of the puck is absolutely phenomenal. And their coaching staff has done a really good job with that group of defensemen. Esa Lindell, awesome hockey player, watched him for years. You know, I still live in Dallas.
How about his goal, Alan?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about sheer power and determination. You know, it was like watching a hot knife through butter for him coming up the ice and allowing a second and third opportunity, you know, on his goal. It was just like, that's what happens. And we know the skill level of certain guys, but this is the time of year where guys truly can make a name for themselves. And I look at that blue line, and you just mentioned a few of them. And Alexiak, like, how good does this guy look now?
Once again, I go back to the coaching staff, what they've been able to do with these players. And, you know, Alexiak was a throwaway player. They sent him to Pittsburgh, and then he was kind of embarrassed in a fight against Tom Wilson that Jim Rutherford had acted like Don King and set up a fight. And as soon as he got back on the ice, they traded him back to Dallas, but he's calmed his game down. He's 6'7". He can skate, does good things with the puck, but now he's realizing it's what I do when I don't have the puck. You know, like, it's not about me being an offensive player like I may have been elsewhere. So they get the mindset right with him. Klingberg was going backwards. This coaching staff revived him, and they've simplified his game. He's got incredible footwork. His offensive abilities are off the charts. So you look at all of those top guys that they have, they've done a really good job. And to me, good size on the back end. Taylor Fedden is a smallish guy, but the rest of them, they've got good size. They've all got excellent skating ability. They protect the inside. And you look at the depth of their team. You know, you have Radulov, who plays a high-intensity game and has revived his career, you know, like last year in Montreal, and he goes every game. And I think he's kind of brought Sagan and Ben along into the fight in this series. But you look at the other players, Fox,
6'3", Fosca 6'3", Como 6'1", 6'2", and then you got the speed of
Hence, you look at all of the players that they have. So they're built for this, and they're not old. But when you look at their older players, what you do get is, look, Corey Perry last night, accidentally on purpose going into the goaltender, you know, and takes a player out, acts like he's falling, hits the goalie, then takes a stab at him, and somehow they end up on the power play. And, you know, Corey Perry is come to play in these playoffs. Joe Pavelski, they finally let the power play somewhat revolve around him. That 5-on-3 last night, I've seen Pavelski score that goal many times, usually off the pass of a Joe Thornton.
He owned that goal in San Jose over his career.
So you look at that, the older players, that the few that they have really come to play. And then the rest of these guys, Dickinson, they're all high motor, high energy players. They're using their assets. They're playing from the inside of the ice to the boards. And when they get to the boards, they're putting their nose and their knees in those puck battles, and they're getting after it. So they're not playing a passive game. Whereas Colorado, they want to play up and down, back and forth, and Dallas has made them battle. And it looks like Dallas is coming out with the puck more often than not.
You mentioned about Corey Perry and the things that he got away with. Colorado's pissed about the officiating, and it's not anything new. I mean, it's been around our game forever, but there was a level of frustration watching a guy like Corey Perry that. Colorado's got to be careful. You start wrapping yourself so much around that, and then you really lose what you're able to control.
Once again, it gets back to worrying about something that doesn't matter. Bad reffing is a part of every hockey game, it seems like, in the playoffs. So if you get so off kilter with that as a coaching staff, it breeds into your players. If the coaches don't quell it from their players, now you're not focusing on what you need to be doing on your shifts. And instead of worrying about what the ref did or didn't do, you need to worry about what you're doing on the ice and your execution. So if you have that in the back of your mind, and you and I got a lot of penalties, but the biggest thing with our penalties, you had to learn to wash them off because you knew you were going to get them. You don't dwell on them. And because that's a part of being a physical hockey player. But at the same time, You've got to make sure the most important thing is, what are you doing with your puck management, your positional play? And that's where really the focus comes in. Corey Perry's going to do that. I don't think I've ever seen him have a game where he's not accidentally, line someone up with an elbow or stuck his hip out somewhere. So you've got to expect he's going to do things. You can't retaliate on it. And they're doing a good job. All the Dallas players, they've got a kind of a slow other four defensemen, a bigger other four defensemen in Colorado. And the Stars are getting there and arriving, finishing the hit, stopping on the puck, getting their stick on it at all times. And they're frustrating the Avalanche in their own zone, especially on the wall and below the goal line.
You lost a big body, a right-handed shot, a minute muncher in Eric Johnson, and I don't know if they can recover back there now.
Nah, and Cole Makar looks like he's exhausted. And, he tries to do a little too much with the puck. He's absolutely phenomenal. I expect he wins Rookie of the Year, but he is so great with the puck, and he can make up anytime he's ever beaten in a situation or cut out of position. He makes up with pure athleticism. His speed is phenomenal. He doesn't look like he's the biggest guy in the world, but he looks exhausted. Late in the game, he looks like his shoulders are hanging because he's just getting hit every time. He gets hit later. They make him battle. And with the amount of minutes he's playing, they're fatiguing him right now. So that would definitely be the key if I was coaching against him, is to wear him down physically so he doesn't have that jump. Like he did at the start of the game, he owns it. But near late in the game, all of a sudden, he wasn't getting to the spots and moving the puck the way he does in the first 20 and 30 minutes of a game.
Yeah, we're starting to really get to know this this lineup out of Dallas. It wasn't too long ago, Alan. We thought of a Dallas as Jamie Benn and Seguin, and then there's everything else. If those guys aren't going, they don't win. And now you're starting to find out that that may not be the case. And Pavelski, that pickup, wow, it really changed the whole complexion of what I was just speaking about 2 seconds ago. That it's now Pavelski that's kind of turned himself not so much of a Krejci to Bergeron, but he actually could be like, it feels like it's a Bergeron scenario, that he is the guy, and it's not Seguin and Ben anymore.
Well, the professionalism that he brings to every game, the preparation, you see how hard he battles in those faceoffs. Big penalty kills, power plays, 5-on-5 faceoffs. He's ready. He's dialed in. This is a guy that's closer to the end, and he puts everything on the line. Is he a pretty hockey player? No. He's got a great stick. He works hard. He's been an incredible student of the game, and he just battles every game. I think you have to admire that when you're a teammate. And the effect that he has personality-wise within the room is, I think players would be more prone to go to Joe Pavelski, and he's going to be prone to go to players and give them a pat on the back, a kick in the ass to get them going in the right direction. But he's more of a nurturing guy. I think you have to have those positive older players in your room. And think about it. You've got a couple of Hart Trophy winners there. But to me, Joe Pavelski right now, the leadership he's providing by, his quality of play every single shift that he's on the ice, it cannot be overlooked, regardless of where his stats are at. It's everything else that he brings to the game as well.
Nick Kyprios, Alan May on the Real Kyper at Noon show. I want to bookend news and notes away from the bubbles, Edmonton and Toronto, respectively. We broke today's show off with the big trade between Pittsburgh and the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the key component out of that is Kasperi Kapanen from the Toronto Maple Leafs going to Pittsburgh for a first-round pick, and 5 prospects changed hands between Toronto and Pittsburgh. Now I want to go off the ice, behind the bench, and particularly your team, Alan, the Washington Capitals. They took a bit of a gamble with Todd Reirden, replacing Barry Trotz off a Stanley Cup championship win, something that I don't know if we've ever seen that type of scenario before. I certainly haven't over my career of broadcasting and playing, where a Stanley Cup champion coach doesn't renew a contract and moves on. And now we hear Washington wanting to go veteran. And Alan, we know what that means. That points the finger at Babcock, Laviolette, Gerard Gallant, I mean, those are big names out there, and they could be expensive names. So an organization that notoriously watches their spending, tell us, are they willing to dig deep in their pockets and pay the money it's going to take to get a guy like Mike Babcock?
Well, I've never labeled myself as an insider, but I guess I do have inside info as
There
to
you go. Share it.
as things that go on here. And it took two sides to screw up the Barry Trotz thing, and the team and Barry, and they couldn't come to agreement. He had a contract extension by automatically winning the cup. I know that the offer was raised to amount way more than he had ever made as a coach, probably double of what the extension was, but not the amount of it wasn't the term that he wanted. He knew what he wanted in term, and I guess he deserved it. He did deserve it from the culture change at the Islanders and the results that we've seen on the ice. So it's unfortunate to happen. I was at the building the day that it looked like negotiations broke up and the ownership wasn't too happy. And it did happen. And they had a coach waiting in the wings that they thought, and it just didn't work out. So to me, they do understand. You have all this, you max cap every year. They're within a few dollars at every day of going over the salary cap and having to be penalized the next season. They've had to do different things on call up, send down a guy with a salary of $950 or 1.2 and bring up a guy with a salary of the league minimum for a couple of days, or just have an extra roster spot open for 4 and 5 days. They have had to do that. So they do spend the money here. But now if they do want a veteran coach, I have all the belief in the world that they realize no matter what Barry wanted, maybe he should have got it. Maybe even if they wanted to go shorter term, raise the level, like the height of the salary. So, the mistakes were made. Barry was complicit in it as well, not blaming anyone really. It just, he had leverage and he used it, and he got an incredible contract with the New York Islanders. He gets the players that he wants on the team. And it would have been tough to win here again. You were losing some players. But with this team, I think you have to go older, and it's going to cost you, because Ovechkin will be 35 next month. Kuznetsov, 28. Lars Eller's 31. Nicholas Backstrom, the next time they play, will be 32. John Carlson, 31. All of their defensemen are either 30 or 31, with the exception of Jonas Siegenthaler, who is basically their fifth or their sixth defenseman right now. So if you want to get the players' respect, I don't think you can come in with an unproven guy that doesn't have an incredible track record. And you want to make sure that Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie, Carlson, that leadership group right there, that core, that they value everything you say, that they respect. And at the same time, you need a coach that's going to push their buttons. So a veteran coach is more prone to pushing buttons where he's not going to lose it. We saw Dallas Eakins try to push buttons as a fresh coach out of the American Hockey League in Edmonton. It did not work. It faltered for him. It's faltered for other young coaches who try to be that aggressive because guys don't really maybe necessarily take them serious. So when it comes to the names, Gallant, Laviolette, Babcock, those are certainly guys you have to interview, you have to look at, and you have to see how they fit. Would Babcock modify his tone or his rhetoric with some of the players? But at the same time, I love his game plan for the Washington Capitals. I like the way his teams play. A couple years ago, I think the talent of the Capitals beat, the veteran talent, and the leadership ended up beating the Leafs by Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie, Brooks Orpik, guys like that won that playoff series. And the incredible goaltending in that series by Braden Holtby. And you look at that. So yeah, I do like Babcock as a coach. All the other things you've got to, you don't want this guy offending an Ovechkin or a Backstrom. So he's going to have to modify that. But you have to be, with your leadership group, with your older players, you've got to be honest. You've got to push buttons. And we've heard a lot of attacks on Babcock from former players. But then again, it's former players that maybe didn't get what they want. He is a Stanley Cup champion. Should he have won more? It's hard to win back-to-back Stanley Cups. You look at Peter Laviolette, 3 times to the finals, comes in, guns a-blazing every time, changes the teams. And then what does he have an answer? Well, I think the immediate answer here in Washington is get what you can out of Ovechkin and Backstrom for at least the next 2 years. And I think you have to do it with a guy with a track record, with a guy that's been around. Gerard Gallant's had a couple of good seasons, then let go the very next. So there's question marks. And how well did the Golden Knights play against the Caps? in the finals that year. That was the easiest round they had, by far the easiest. So you question whether that matters. But and then I don't think if you had a lifetime American League guy or a longtime assistant coach on an NHL bench, you've got to see who they've coached with, what their track record of improving and developing their players. And to me, I think that, everyone's gone to laptop hockey and the analytics. Well, I still think you have to get on the ice and teach players. And I think the older coaches, and they've got to get more hands-on again. So you need a hands-on coaching staff that actually takes the guys on the ice and gets the reps in doing things correctly, not just doing a 30-minute flow practice and going and watching video for 2 hours. So to me, I think it's critically important they do hire a veteran coach, whether he's been a head coach, one of those big names, or it's a longtime assistant coach on a bench somewhere who's got a really good track record of development.
So what I get out of you is Mike Babcock's at the top of your list. That's what I got out of that.
You know what? I've heard all those things about him, but when I watch, he's been kind of a groundbreaker with the way they started playing the game in Detroit. There were a lot of things that people weren't doing in hockey, and maybe with the tutelage of Scotty Bowman and leaning on him at times, it helped his coaching performance. But at the same time, you still have to have the respect. So I wonder if he can modify, his temperament to make sure. I still think you have to have accountability with your players, like Kuznetsov. Should he not be in the conversation of the top players in the league at all times instead of wanting more out of him? There has to be someone that pushes the right buttons with him to get him going at all times.
He is what he is. He can win. If he has a long stretch, he could win a Conn Smythe. But you're not going to him for advice. You're not going to him for anything. He's a hired gun.
As long as he's here, you have to make sure that Kuznetsov is a factor. And I thought too many times the last couple of years he was not a factor. And so if he's part of the puzzle moving forward, you've got to get someone that pushes his buttons and does not let him get away with anything less than an A effort. So I'm looking at you need fire. Yeah.
What I'm getting out of you is that Washington is fully ready to right a wrong in the handling of Barry Trotz, which means if I'm Mike Babcock, I'm asking for a 5-year deal at over 30, between 30 and 40 million. Okay. And I've got a 2-year window. I got 2 years to win a Stanley Cup with Ovi, Backstrom, and company. And if I do it and I start seeing the club kind of head south, then I'll take my nice little 2.5, 3-year parachute and quietly go away. And I would have done my job.
Well, I think if your ego is going to get in the way of just taking the money like that, you're not going to get yourself a contract. The biggest thing with the Capitals, with the age of all the players that I explained, is Karlsson he's 30. Dylan, 29. He's going to be 30 when the season starts. Nick Jensen, 30 when the season starts. That's if Dylan comes back. Kempny, 30 when the season comes back. Orlov, he's got, I guess, another year, about another year. So he's still a 29-year-old hockey player this season. He just had a birthday. So you got an older decor. You have all those older forwards. You look at Hagelin's going to be 32. He's got time on his deal. Kovalchuk, I can't expect him to be back here. Hathaway at 29. Dowd at 30. Panik at 29. That's an old hockey team. So I don't think you can go out and give the big 4 and 5 and 6-year contracts. So it's going to have to be someone that was willing to take a chance, maybe up their level of what their salary is for the first 2-3 years, or maybe give them a big 3-year, whatever it is. But I don't think you can go long term, and because it's going to be a rebuild. Is there going to be someone that you can rebuild with? Now, maybe Babcock would want to be part of a rebuild. What was he, 5 years into his contract? So I don't know the exact dollar amount. He had a lot of signing bonuses and upfront money, so you don't know where he's at. But when you look at all of those guys, I had heard that Peter Laviolette wanted 6 years with New Jersey, something like that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just heard it the last couple of days.
Right?
And, who wouldn't? Hey, I want a 10-year contract for 7-8 figures. But, you have to be realistic. Do you want to get back in the game? Do you have a good roster here to work with? When you look at Ovechkin, bona fide superstar, he's still not slowing down. He needs his other players on this team to be better. You look at a TJ Oshie. He'll be 34 in December. He's a coach's dream. So you have a good core, but you've got to get the most out of every single player in this lineup. And I think that's why your older generals, Babcock, Laviolette, guys that have been around who have won, to me, they're good guys to have because they can push buttons. They do have a track record that the players respect. And you still got to be personable every day, but you've got to hold accountability. And there's nothing like experience. You can't teach it. You have to earn it. And to me, an experienced coach really matters right now.
We saw a big trade today out of Toronto and Pittsburgh, and they wanted to change the narrative around the negativity in terms of not sitting idle and making changes. Do you expect the Washington Capitals to address this fairly early here, or do you think that this search could go into the off season?
Well, I would think with, they're teams that need coaches right now. You have to wonder, what is Dallas going to do? Rick Bowness certainly has done an excellent job with the team and the coaching staff they have on the bench there with John Stevens. You look at that. So you have that Calgary, they have an interim coach. What do they want to do? They have to do better. They demand more. So there is kind of an arms race. What if Tampa loses this series? You don't think they want a veteran coach with experience that can push buttons of those players and not let certain things happen? So you still think players and coaches are on the hot seat around the league. So I would expect that the Capitals would have to be in the next 3 weeks to a month. A decision would have to be made, and you'd have to hang your hat on that because things are going to happen very quickly with those other teams hunting around and sniffing for things they need. You need a good bench boss. You need an entire coaching staff. You do not want to wait too long. Everything's shuffled now. Normally if you don't have a coaching job by July 1st, even as an assistant, you're going to have a hard time getting on a bench somewhere, let alone if you're an NHL experienced guy getting an American League job. So I would think that the Caps have to address it in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Whether or not it's Gerard Gallant or Babcock, Laviolette, has Ovechkin put himself in a position now, and if you're Ted Leonsis, the owner, that you'd want his impact on the next coach? Would you welcome a conversation between, say, Gerard Gallant or Mike Babcock with Ovechkin prior to making any type of announcement or having any type of deal? Is that the player Ovechkin is now?
Yeah, I don't know how often that happens. I think the general manager would have to get the temperament or gauge what the coach that he's interviewing, what his philosophy on Ovechkin would be, and whether he thinks it would work before any type of conversation would ever happen. And I'm sure that, you would just ask, what do you know? What have you heard with your leaders, with your older guys? What do you think this guy could do for us? I think, as a general manager, I think he can push our younger guys better. I think he can, put his foot on the throttle and get us to play a different, better way. Barry was a very stern guy, and he had a very enthusiastic coaching staff. And Lane Lambert, who's a guy I think should be a head coach very, very soon.
Now, you can't bring Lambert back to Washington.
Well, it would be, to me, he is ready to be an NHL coach. And,
but it goes against the experience.
I'm not sure, but he's been a longtime coach. So he does have experience. So he'd be one of those guys that falls in the category of a longtime coach and a guy that's worked hard that, they do have a familiarity with around here. But at the same time, Brian has said he wants a guy with experience. So you would take that at face value, thinking it's a National Hockey League head coach experience. And, that to me is the bottom line. Now, if you threw a curveball because if you couldn't come to a contract agreement with those other names for the term you want and the dollar amount you want, there's got to be give and take on both sides. And I would think that Laviolette, more than anyone, probably has more takers right now than anyone. And I'm not sure if he's got time left on his deal with Nashville, but at the same time, he's been in the finals 3 times. He's had an immediate impact on his teams. And, to me, a guy like that, he's got leverage. He's got leverage in what he wants to do. Babcock's got a lot of money owed to him. He's got leverage in what he wants to do. And then what is the right fit for a guy like that? Where would he go? There's a lot of question marks around, but I think first and foremost, the Caps would want to get one of those names. Maybe there's more names in there, and there are guys on benches right now who have been head coaches, namely John Stevens, guys like that. But you need to have instant respect from your leaders of your team, your star players, and guys that'll hold the players accountable. We hear of coaches making adjustments. I don't think many coaches make adjustments, to tell you the truth. So you have to have someone that's very impactful, when you talk about adjustments in a game, a lot of people, I don't think there's enough coaches in the game that actually make adjustments in game big time and throw a monkey wrench into what's going on. So to me, you have to have someone that's been around the block for a while that will hold players accountable more than anything to get the best out of them.
One last note on the Washington Capitals, because we are in total agreement, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners and followers are as well, that there is a small window to win a Stanley Cup back in Washington again. And what appears to be pretty clear is they're going to have to do it with a new goalie, that Washington can afford to sign Holtby and will not go deep on a contract that I'm sure he's still looking for since he won a Stanley Cup. So is it Samsonov, or is they going to have to go find another goalie? And we know the list. It's deep. And we could add Fleury, Marc-Andre Fleury to that list in the offseason. What does Washington do? Is Samsonov the guy that this experienced coach is going to go to? Would you even want Samsonov with a hard ass like Babcock or Laviolette?
Well, I've said this many times during this season. You just don't give the net to a young goaltender. And, with Holtby here, and Samsonov had great numbers, but he faltered down February. And then he gets injured during the lockdown. And so where is he going to be when the season starts? Will he be ready to perform in training camp and battle on a nightly basis? We still haven't got the exact word on what his injury was. So is it an upper body, a lower body, what have you? But to me, it's a lot of pressure. I still think it's a tandem situation here, with whoever's going near the playoffs gets the net, whoever deserves it. And that's where accountability comes in. When Braden Holtby, I don't think he's going to get a Bobrovsky contract of $10 million a year, because it looks like all the high-end goalies, the guys that were paid the monster money as UFAs. And when was the last time a UFA goalie won a Stanley Cup? It's been forever. And you have to look at, Braden Holtby is he going to get an 8-year contract? I don't think so. I think with the flat cap, it's going to affect him more than any other goaltender as to what he thought he was going to get and what he's going to get. And I'd expect he'd get a 4-year deal somewhere, but it's not going to be for 8, 9, 10 million. The Calgary Flames, the Edmonton Oilers, teams out west, they need goaltending. And it looks like Calgary would be suited to grab a guy like Holtby. With Robin Lehner out there, you'd think Vegas has to do something. He's been phenomenal the last couple of years. And Marc-Andre Fleury, you would think he would definitely have to be on the move, and they're going to have to eat, I would say, at least half or more of his salary.
That's going to be tough. That will be a challenge.
And me, after what I said at the start of the show, he would be a guy that I would want on my team. If you could get his salary at a reduction for a few more years, because he doesn't look like he's slowing down to me. He's highly competitive. He's still one of the fastest goaltenders in the league. I would want that guy in my clubhouse. I would want him around. He is incredibly positive. He has fun with the game. He's not one of those grumpy old bastards like you and I played with. That guys don't realize that you have the best job in the world. If you're a hockey player and you're playing in that, it's the best job in the world, regardless of whether you're on the ice or the press box. It's still the best job. And so he still has that attitude that he's relishing every day that he gets to be a National Hockey League player, and he doesn't want to quit. People always say, hey, that guy should pack it in. Why should you pack it in when it's the greatest job in the world? Someone's going to pay you. Take the money and keep playing and having those good times.
Don Beaupre wasn't always a grumpy old bastard, was he?
You know what? He's one of my favorite guys. I love him. So I love that dude. So he, to me, he was never in a bad mood. But we played with some other. Yeah, he's an anomaly for goaltender, because he never took anything out in teammates. He never gave a defenseman a stink eye on the goal. Probably didn't like the coaches too much at times. But you look at, there are guys that were grumpy every day that we played, and you wonder, how can you be miserable when you're playing, when you're doing this for a living?
Alan May, great job today. Thank you so much for co-hosting today, because Doug is on a
golfing
deep secret assignment that I'm not even sure I know what it is. I'll find out tomorrow.
Does he still have that Town and Country panel van that he picked me up when I get traded to the Capitals?
I'm going to ask him. I'm going to ask him tomorrow. No, he's got an RV now. He bought an RV.
Good for him. That's what you do on the seniors tour. So he's probably on the seniors tour following them around.
He is. Alan May, everybody. Before I let you go, Alan, just tonight's action. Bruins Lightning Canucks Golden Knights, do we see one series tied, two series tied, or do we see two series go 2-0?
I'm looking at the Golden Knights. They're deep. All their players can skate. They've got an excellent game plan. They overwhelm you, and I just think the young players on the Canucks are being overwhelmed right now. DeBoer, an excellent coach, been to the finals, has decent playoff success. I believe he's ready for this. I think that series goes down to 4, so I expect Vegas to handily win again. And in the other series, if Kucherov goes, you would think the Lightning should be able to hang in there. But for some reason, I'm going with the Bruins. They're relentless right now. The young guys are moving. So I'm going to go with the Bruins in tonight's match as well.
They're battle tested. You know, Krug, Carlo, you watch those guys. They, year after year in the playoffs, they make big plays.
Absolutely. And I think for the Bruins, the key is you got to wear down Victor Hedman. He is a stud, but you've got to wear him down. He was a huge factor in the game the other night. Make him pay a lot more. If McDonough doesn't play, you know, there's another guy that does simple things that are huge over the course of a game, and they have an older D. They're not where they were before, so you have to wear them down. I think the Bruins' youthful forwards and the grit that they play the game with can wear down the Lightning. So I'd expect the Bruins to be able to wear them down, get all over Kucherov, get to the net, and score some greasy goals.
Alan, we just got word from the NHL that Tortorella was fined $25,000 for his act regarding the dealing with the media. I'm sure he's sitting there going, 25, I would have paid 50.
I can't believe what the league's trying to change it, because it's the worst kept secret in the game, and the reporters have been fooled way too many times. He loses, he never buries his players. You know, he just says we need to be better. When they win, all he does is speak about his players. He does not like to lose. He is passionate.
Does not like the media. Doesn't like stupid questions.
Yeah, and I look at what he's done, the way he's elevated. Dubois was it was a huge surprise pick when they took him. But now, not a team in the National Hockey League wouldn't want Pierre-Luc Dubois. And the leadership of Nick Foligno, he was always a hard-nosed, grinding two-way player. But could you imagine having that guy in your room now after being around John Tortorella, the leadership lessons?
Yeah.
They can get stiff with each other. They can argue. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're all teammates, coaching players, and they stick together. And that's one thing that John Tortorella breeds within his environment and his culture is everyone's after it. Everyone's on the same page. You can get on each other, but at the same time, it's all about winning. And they still all treat each other very, very well. So you get good leaders out of what John Tortorella brings to your clubhouse.
Alan, that's what we went over an hour today with you, and it just feels like we could keep it going all day long. But great job today. Great job breaking down the Leaf Pittsburgh Penguin trade. Great job on various cities in terms of their series, and great job on giving us some insight on the next coach of the Washington Capitals. Doug's got a big act to follow, and I will ask him about his town and country station wagon that he picked you up in. That was in Washington.
Yeah, back before the internet, we didn't even know. I didn't know where Baltimore was, Washington, as far as where the team was located in the middle of nowhere. And this guy in a brown suit and big glasses, like about Harry Carey glasses, picks me up at the airport, and we got in his van. He had about 4 baby seats in there or something like that. It smelled like dirty diapers. And, he took me in and ended up being a phenomenal assistant coach for both you and I. And I think my career went backwards after he was no longer my assistant coach.
I can't shake him.
Really good coach.
It's 2020. I can't shake him.
He's a funny guy. He's a good guy.
He is. Okay, Alan, I'm going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of the games tonight. And as always, don't be a stranger around here on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Thanks for doing this, Alan May.
Take care, and thanks for having me, Kip.
And thanks all of you for continuing to support us. I think we're growing. I think more people are starting to figure out where we are. Doug McLean, Nick Kyprios, Alan May, who's terrific, Darren Pang, and we're just getting bigger and stronger. We're here live Monday through Friday. We really appreciate your support, and we hear all your comments, and I do react to them. I'm trying to catch up to as many as I can. Keep telling your friends about us. Keep the subscriptions coming in. Hit the like button for us. All of that means so much to us. And it gives us our energy to come back every day for all of you to talk about the greatest sport in the world, and that is hockey. So for Nick Kyprios, Mike Golbanek Jr. here for me, my great intern, and the crew at linemovement.com and Real Kyper at noon, thanks for joining, and we'll see you tomorrow with Doug MacLean.